The sky burned with the fury of endless war. Ash rained down over the broken land as Commander Raylan Voss moved through the shattered remains of Outpost Seraph. Smoke wrapped around crumbling towers, and the twisted wrecks of abandoned mechs groaned under the weight of destruction. Every step he took crunched over broken weapons, spent casings, and the memories of fallen comrades. Raylan tightened his grip on his pulse rifle. The energy cell buzzed faintly against his armor, a small but steady reminder he was still breathing. His visor flickered with static. Communications were dead. The last transmission he heard was a call for retreat, quickly drowned by the roar of enemy cannons. Now, he was alone. A distant rumble rolled across the blackened plains. Raylan dropped into a crouch, scanning through the thick veil of smoke. Movement flickered at the edge of his vision. Not a machine, not a drone, but something alive. Heart hammering, he advanced cautiously. Half buried beneath a slab of scorched steel, a figure struggled weakly. Long strands of shimmering silver. Hair spilled across the rubble. Her skin, a soft blend of lavender and grey, shimmered even in the dim light. She wore the distinctive battle crest of the Valari, humanity's oldest and fiercest allies. Raylan's instincts screamed for caution. Protocol dictated he leave incapacitated soldiers behind, especially with enemy patrols sweeping the area. He hesitated, breath fogging against his cracked helmet. Then the woman's eyes opened. Luminous, storm-gray orbs filled with both pain and defiance. He lowered his weapon and moved closer. "Stay still," he muttered, kneeling beside her. "Commander Raylan Voss, United Earth Forces." She gave a faint, strained smile. "Zyra Solis, 3rd Valari Strike Wing. Can't feel my legs." A quick scan confirmed it. Severe spinal trauma. She wouldn't walk again without major medical intervention. A heavy weight settled in Raylan's chest. Leaving her wasn't just wrong. It was impossible. Raylan looked toward the distant horizon, where faint flashes marked enemy positions. Logic demanded he turn away. Training screamed at him to prioritize survival. Orders would not save her. "Everyone else made their choice," he growled under his breath. "I'll make mine." Bracing himself, he began clearing the debris trapping her. Zyra gritted her teeth but said nothing. As he lifted her carefully into his arms, Raylan realized how light she felt, almost fragile. Yet she carried the pride of a warrior in her every breath. "This might hurt," he warned, adjusting his grip. "I've survived worse," she whispered, her voice laced with stubborn pride. Keeping low, Raylan sprinted across the ruined field, every muscle screaming under the strain. The sound of distant engines buzzed in his ears. Enemy patrols were close, too close. Zyra pressed her forehead against his shoulder, murmuring something he couldn't hear over the chaos. Maybe it was a blessing or a curse. Maybe both. Raylan didn't slow. Instinct and raw determination drove him forward. Whatever future waited for them, he would not let her fall here. The skeleton of a fallen carrier loomed ahead, its broken frame offering a chance to hide. He ducked inside, heart pounding, pulse rifle at the ready. Shadows twisted in the half-light, but no movement stirred. For now, they were safe. Raylan set Zyra down gently behind a pile of shattered armor plating. She gripped his hand, her skin fever-warm against his gloves. "You're a fool," she murmured, her voice weak but fierce. Raylan chuckled softly, wiping soot from his visor. "Maybe, but you're still breathing." A ghost of a smile touched her lips as she closed her eyes. Outside, the world burned on. Inside, two broken warriors clung to a single, defiant hope. They were not finished yet. Inside the broken carrier, silence pressed heavy. Dust floated like ghosts in the stale air as Raylan Voss checked Zyra Solis's injuries again. Her pulse remained steady, but every breath she took seemed to cost her strength. He pulled a cracked thermal blanket from a supply crate and draped it over her trembling frame. "Try to rest," he said, voice low, almost lost to the rattling metal around them. Zira opened one eye, a flicker of amusement glinting there. "You humans always think blankets fix mortal wounds," Raylan smirked. "It's the thought that counts." She let out a soft chuckle, quickly turning into a wince. Pain etched deep lines across her usually sharp features. Guilt twisted in Raylan's gut. If he'd found her earlier, maybe... "Don't," Zira whispered, sensing his thoughts as if reading them off his face. "You didn't cause this." He shifted awkwardly, kneeling beside her. His armor hissed as cracked servos struggled with his movements. He couldn't afford guilt. Not now. A low hum vibrated through the floor. Engines. Distant. Growing louder. Enemy scouts searching for survivors. Raylan cursed under his breath and killed the last of his external lights. Darkness swallowed them whole. "We can't stay here long," he muttered, checking his ammo. 2 mags left. Not ideal. Zira tilted her head back against the broken carrier wall, her storm-gray eyes watching him closely. "There's a Valari outpost, northwest, hidden beneath the ravine cliffs. It has a healing core." Raylan frowned. He'd heard stories, ancient Valari tech, blending science and something beyond. Human understanding. Some said those devices could restore the dead. "What's the catch?" he asked, tightening the strap on his rifle. A shadow crossed her face. "The core doesn't just heal. It binds. Physiology, spirit, soul." He stared at her, heart skipping a beat. He didn't have time for. "Binds?" Zira gave a slow, tired nod. Emerging, permanent, irreversible. Silence stretched between them, thick as the smoke outside. Raylan wasn't religious, but even he understood when something sacred was involved. Still, looking at her battered, beautiful form lying helpless before him, he knew hesitation wasn't an option. "We'll get you there," he said, voice firm. Zira studied him, something soft and unspoken in her gaze. "You don't even know me." "Don't need to," he replied. "You're one of us." She smiled then, truly smiled, and for a moment the ruins around them disappeared, leaving only 2 souls hanging between destruction and hope. Raylan hoisted her up again, adjusting his hold so she lay securely against his chest. Despite her injuries, she felt solid, real, grounding him against the madness outside. Footsteps echoed beyond the carrier walls, heavy, sharp, precise, search teams. Raylan's muscles tensed. He moved carefully, silently, weaving through shattered beams and tangled wiring. Every sound felt amplified 1,000 times. As he crept through a side hatch, Zira murmured against him, voice barely a breath. "You're risking your life for a stranger." Raylan smiled grimly, pressing closer to the twisted wreckage for cover. "Wouldn't be the first time," she exhaled a shaky laugh. "Humans, always chasing lost causes." The carrier's battered hull opened into a dead ravine, its walls blackened and scorched. Perfect cover if they moved fast. Raylan launched forward, boots slipping over loose gravel, every nerve wired tight. Zira clutched his shoulder, her grip surprisingly strong despite everything. Her touch wasn't desperate, it was trusting. That realization struck him harder than any plasma blast. They weren't soldiers anymore. Not here, not now. They were simply 2 beings fighting to survive. The ravine grew deeper with every step, the world above vanishing behind fractured rock. Raylan's breath rasped in his helmet. Blood roared in his ears. His legs burned with exhaustion, but he didn't slow. A faint glow shimmered ahead, pale blue against the endless gray. Zira stirred weakly, sensing it too. The healing core was close. "Almost there," Raylan whispered, not sure if he was speaking to her or himself. Another few meters, just a little further. As they stumbled into the hidden cavern, safety still uncertain, Raylan realized something profound. He wasn't carrying a burden. He was carrying a promise, and he would see it through, no matter what it cost him. The cavern swallowed them in cold silence. Jagged stone walls twisted upward, veins of glowing minerals pulsing faintly beneath their surface. Raylan Voss shifted, his grip on Zira Solis, cradling her closer as he descended the uneven path. Ahead, at the heart of the hollow, a monument of ancient Velari design floated above a stone dais. The healing core shimmered, spinning slowly, strands of pale blue energy spiraling around it like living threads. It radiated a warmth that reached Raylan's bones, even through the thick shell of his armor. Zira stirred in his arms, silver hair brushing his jawline. Her eyes opened, dazed, yet fierce. "There," she whispered, pointing weakly toward the core. "Place me, at its center." Raylan obeyed without hesitation, navigating the cracked floor until they reached the ancient platform. He knelt, lowering her gently onto the polished stone. As soon as her body touched the surface, faint tendrils of light stretched from the core toward her. Curious, hungry, Raylan's instincts bristled. It didn't feel like technology. It felt alive. He glanced at Zira, uncertainty flickering across his features. "Are you sure about this?" She managed a faint nod, her voice barely audible. "You must step in with me. Alone, the core cannot work." He hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment press against his chest. This wasn't just about saving a life anymore. It was about surrendering a part of himself to something unknown, something permanent. Still, the answer had already solidified in his heart long before doubt crept in. Raylan shed his broken helmet, tossing it aside. It clattered against the stone and fell silent. Taking a deep breath, he stepped onto the platform, standing over Zira as the core's tendrils brushed his skin. The energy responded instantly. Lines of light slithered around his boots, raced up his armor, and encircled him in a soft, vibrating glow. Zira reached out, her trembling fingers finding his wrist. The instant they touched, the core ignited. A beam of light stabbed downward, engulfing them both. Raylan gasped as the sensation tore through him. It wasn't pain exactly, more like being unraveled and rewritten at once. He felt his heartbeat merge with Zira's fading rhythm, their bodies sinking in perfect harmony. Memories not his own flashed behind his eyes. Zira as a child, training with energy blades. Her first flight over the twin moons of Valaris. The crushing loneliness of war. In return, he felt her absorbing his memories, his family, his battles, his long-buried hopes of peace. Their DNA unraveled like ancient scrolls and rewrote themselves together, strand by strand. Raylan's body, burned not from injury, but from transformation. He gritted his teeth, anchoring himself to the only thing that mattered, Zira's hand, still clutching his. Energy spiraled tighter around them, weaving into intricate patterns that pulsed in time with their fused heartbeats. His muscles strengthened, nerves sharpened, senses expanded, until he could hear Zira's breath like a whisper inside his mind. Time twisted. Minutes stretched into eternities. Then, as suddenly as it began, the light collapsed inward, sinking. Back into the core. Raylan stumbled, catching himself on trembling legs. Zira gasped and sat upright, her eyes wide, her body whole once more. The deep bruises and torn flesh had vanished, replaced by a radiant vitality that almost took his breath away. He reached for her, but froze when he noticed the change. Flecks of silver now streaked his hair, and his skin shimmered faintly under the cavern's light. Zira mirrored his shock, storm-gray eyes now flickering with threads of earth brown. They had not just healed, they had become something new. Raylan reached out, brushing his fingers against Zira's cheek. She leaned into his touch without hesitation, their connection still humming between them, invisible yet unbreakable. "I can feel you," he whispered, stunned by the depth of awareness. "And you," she replied softly, a tear tracing down her cheek, not from pain, but something deeper. A loud crack echoed through the cavern, pulling them back to reality. Raylan's head snapped up. Enemy patrols had found the ravine. They had no time left. Zira rose, strength flowing through her restored limbs, energy crackling at her fingertips. Raylan felt her battle instincts ignite within him, guiding his hand to his rifle before he even registered the threat. They exchanged a glance. No words were needed. Together, reborn and bound, they moved toward the mouth of the cavern, two warriors sharing one heart, ready to face the storm as one. Raylan Voss and Zira Solis burst from the cavern's mouth like a storm unleashed. Plasma. Fire ripped across the blackened valley, streaking the smoky air with deadly precision. Enemy drones circled overhead, their mechanical whines slicing through the night. Raylan's pulse rifle came up before thought even registered. A sharp crack echoed as he dropped the nearest drone in a single shot, guided by instinct no longer, entirely his own. Zira was already moving, her body a blur of silver and violet light, energy blades spinning in her hands like living extensions of her will. They fought not side by side, but as a single force. Raylan shifted left without a word, sensing Zira's presence flood his mind. She anticipated his movements before he made them, filling gaps he hadn't noticed, turning danger into opportunity. A hulking mech crashed into view, its cannons locking onto them. Before Raylan could even lift his rifle, Zira hurled a crackling spear of pure energy, shattering the machine's armored chest. Sparks rained down as the mech stumbled backward and collapsed, smoke curling from its ruined core. Raylan felt the exhilaration of the kill surge through their bond, not triumph, but a fierce, burning joy. Together, they were something the enemy had no defense against. Another squad of enemy soldiers surged over a nearby ridge, weapons blazing. Raylan didn't think. He pivoted instinctively, dropping 3 with pinpoint shots while Zira weaved through the chaos, her blades cutting clean arcs through metal and flesh alike. Their connection deepened with every breath, every heartbeat synced, every decision shared. Raylan caught a glimpse of Zira's face through the chaos, focused, radiant, unstoppable. In that instant, he knew he would follow her into any inferno, challenge any fate if it meant standing at her side. Incoming mortar fire shattered. The ground behind them, spraying dirt and debris into the air. Raylan shielded Zira without hesitation, even though she had already sensed it and shifted their momentum forward. The ravine's walls narrowed ahead, creating a bottleneck. Perfect for an ambush. Raylan grinned grimly. It would be their killing ground. Without a spoken plan, they moved, their merged instincts turning the rocky corridor into a graveyard for the enemy. Raylan's rifle barked short, brutal bursts, while Zira flowed like a living blade, her strikes carving through armor as if it were cloth. A sniper's laser sight flickered across Raylan's chest, gone before the trigger pulled. Zira's blade slicing through the hidden attacker before Raylan even registered the threat. They cleared the ravine in minutes, leaving behind a trail of shattered machines and silent bodies. Not a single wasted movement, not a breath out of place. Beyond the ravine stretched the scorched plains, where the remains of Unity Base awaited their next goal. Somewhere among the ruins, survivors might be holding out, or it could already be lost. Either way, they had to reach it. As they paused atop a crumbled ridge to assess the path ahead, Raylan became aware of something stirring deep within Zira. He turned to her, eyes narrowing. "You feel it too," she said, her voice trembling not with fear, but awe. Raylan nodded. A faint pulse, softer than a whisper yet undeniable, resonated through their shared bond. A new life, fragile but powerful, awakening within Zira's womb. A child. The first of their kind. For a moment, the world fell away. The fires, the war, the broken earth. All that remained was the fragile spark of hope growing between them. Raylan stepped closer, his hand finding Zyra's. She squeezed back, fierce and certain. "We protect it," she said. "With everything," he answered. Before them, the wreckage of Unity Base smoldered under a crimson sky. Enemy banners fluttered over shattered walls. Patrols moved with ruthless efficiency, securing the remains. Raylan narrowed his gaze, feeling Zira's battle fury ignite within him. They could not allow the enemy to keep this ground, not with what was at stake. Together, they descended the HFY ridge, silent predators moving through ash and ruin. Enemy sentries crumbled before they understood the threat. Automated turrets failed against their seamless coordination. Armored squads broke apart under relentless, synchronized attacks. Raylan and Zyra became the storm the battlefield feared. Their child, though unborn, pulsed strength into them, a beacon of resilience wrapped in love and defiance. Steel and fire raged around them, but nothing could break their unity now. Their story had changed. They were no longer soldiers. They were guardians. They were future. The remains of Unity Base sprawled before them like the bones of a fallen giant. Towers that once stood proud lay shattered, half buried in ash. Broken walls offered little protection, now barely clinging to their former purpose. Raylan Voss crouched behind a cracked support beam, scanning the wreckage through his cracked visor. Zira Solis moved beside him, her senses stretching outward like a living radar. Their bond buzzed with shared urgency. Enemy patrols swarmed the base, armored troops patrolling in tight formation. Drones zipped overhead, scanning every corner for survivors. Raylan counted at least 3 heavy cannons positioned near the main command center. Charging in without a plan would be suicide, except they weren't alone anymore. A gentle pulse fluttered at the edge of their connection, distinct and deliberate. Raylan felt it first, a ripple in the currents of reality, subtle but insistent. Zyra pressed her hand against her abdomen, her breath catching in wonder. The child within them was awake, aware, reaching out. Before Raylan could react, the world shifted. The damaged turrets overlooking the main gate flickered, their targeting systems hesitating. Drones in the sky veered off course, confusion spreading through their networks. Zira's lips parted in awe. "It's influencing them." Raylan nodded, unable to look away as flickers of strange energy danced along his fingertips. "Helping us." Their unborn child wasn't just a passenger. It was a force. A bridge between human resilience and Valari intuition. Wielding the language of machines like a second breath, Raylan grinned fiercely. "Let's use it." Moving with lethal grace, they slipped from cover, navigating the chaos their child had sown. Drones malfunctioned mid-flight, crashing into walls. Enemy soldiers shouted in panic as their comms scrambled into static. Raylan advanced, rifle raised, each shot deliberate and final. Zyra danced through the ruins, her energy blades slicing down enemies before their weapons even cleared their holsters. Patrols that would have overwhelmed any ordinary squad crumbled under their assault. As they reached the base's central plaza, enemy reinforcements poured from the underground bunkers. Heavy troopers in reinforced exosuits stomped across the fractured concrete, weapons roaring. Raylan braced for impact, but their child acted first. The ground shuddered. Control systems embedded in the enemy's suits spasmed. Hydraulic joints locked. Visors went dark. Soldiers toppled like broken statues, helpless and exposed. Raylan and Zira didn't hesitate. They struck with precision, dismantling the last. Threats standing between them and the command center. The massive doors loomed ahead, sealed and scorched. No time for subtlety. Zyra summoned a spear of condensed energy and hurled it at the locks. Metal screamed as it warped and melted under the focused assault. Raylan kicked the remains aside, clearing the way. Inside, A handful of battered survivors stared in disbelief. Soldiers, medics, and technicians, all barely clinging to hope. They raised weapons at first, instinctively defensive, then froze as they recognized the figures standing before them. "Commander Voss," one gasped, disbelief thick in his voice. "And Zira Solis," another whispered, awe bleeding into every syllable. Raylan lowered his weapon, nodding. "We're here to get you out." The survivors surged forward, gratitude flooding their exhausted faces. Zira's presence steadied them, her calm strength radiating like a beacon. "Evac tunnels?" Raylan asked, scanning the damaged command consoles. One of the medics pointed to a collapsed section of the east wall. "Buried under the first barrage. No way through without heavy equipment." Raylan exchanged a glance with Zira, feeling her determination surge through their bond. They would not let these people die here. Their child stirred again, offering a new idea. Raylan didn't understand the mechanics, but he trusted the feeling. Together, they knelt by the broken tunnel entrance. Zira pressed her palms against the rubble. Raylan mirrored her, sensing the shift in the air as energy poured outward. Stone groaned under the pressure. Metal twisted and cracked, light flared, blinding and pure. When it faded, a narrow but stable path stretched through the debris, a miracle born of two warriors and their unborn child's will. No words were needed. The survivors scrambled through, one by one, disappearing into the dark tunnel beyond. Raylan waited until the last soul vanished before turning back to Zira. She sagged slightly against him, exhausted but smiling. "We did it," she breathed. "Not alone," Raylan reminded her, brushing a lock of silver hair from her forehead. The sound of enemy reinforcements approaching grew louder, rumbling like a gathering storm. Raylan pulled Zira close, feeling the life. Between them pulsed stronger than ever. "We fight to the last," he said. Zira's smile sharpened into something fierce and unbreakable. "Together," she answered. Weapons raised, hearts aligned, they turned to face the oncoming storm. Not just warriors anymore, but a family, unbreakable, unshakable, unstoppable. The sun climbed over the horizon, casting long golden beams across the battered landscape. Smoke still clung to the distant hills, but here, in the heart of the hidden valley, life stirred again. Raylan Voss stood at the entrance of the Unity Sanctuary, his armor dented, his rifle slung low. Around him, humans and Valari worked side by side, rebuilding what war had nearly destroyed. Their laughter and quiet conversations carried a hope he had once thought lost forever. Inside the medical wing, Zira Solis lay resting beneath a canopy of woven silver fibers, her breathing slow but strong. Raylan moved quietly to her side, his footsteps almost reverent across the polished stone floor. Zira's eyes opened as he approached, storm-gray orbs filled with an emotion deeper than any words could capture. "It's time," she whispered, voice trembling with wonder. Raylan nodded, feeling their bond surge with new strength. The child they had fought so fiercely to protect now demanded its place in the world. He took Zira's hand, grounding them both. As healers, both human and Valari, gathered in a protective circle. Soft lights illuminated the chamber, the energy of both races humming together in perfect harmony. Pain tightened Zira's features, but her spirit remained unbroken. Raylan felt every contraction, every struggle. Through their shared link, he bore it with her, willing his strength into her heart. Minutes stretched into hours. A dance of agony and triumph played out against the backdrop of whispered prayers and silent awe. Finally, with a cry that echoed in two worlds at once, their child was born. The infant blinked up at them with wide, brilliant eyes, a stormy blend of gray and brown, skin kissed by soft violet hues, hair shimmering with threads of silver and earth. Raylan's chest tightened painfully as he reached out, cradling the tiny life in his scarred hands. Zira watched him, tears slipping down her cheeks unchecked. "He's perfect," she breathed. Their son cooed softly, an innocent sound that carried the weight of unimaginable futures. The healers stepped back, allowing the new family space. Raylan lowered himself beside Zyra, wrapping his free arm around her shoulders as she leaned into him, exhausted but radiant. Around them, the sanctuary's walls pulsed with light, reacting to the newborn's unconscious connection. Systems designed by two civilizations responded effortlessly to his presence, intertwining like living vines. Raylan marveled as holographic blooms unfurled along the chamber's edges, colors shifting with the child's heartbeat. Technology and spirit fused without conflict, without force. Their son was not just a symbol, he was proof. A soft chime sounded at the door. Ambassadorial delegations waited outside, humans bearing flags of peace, Valari nobles cloaked in shimmering banners. Of starlight, Raylan met Zyra's gaze. She smiled faintly, understanding blooming between them without the need for speech. They rose together, stepping into the waiting world as a single unit. Gasps rippled through the gathered leaders as they beheld the child. A Valari elder, her silver crown glinting under the new sun, stepped forward first. She bowed deeply, an honor never lightly given. Beside her, the human admiral offered a hand pressed over his heart, the ancient sign of respect among Earth's warriors. Neither spoke. Words were useless here. Raylan shifted the child slightly, letting them all see. No declarations were needed. The future spoke for itself. In that fragile heartbeat, centuries of blood and sorrow melted away, replaced by something neither side had ever dared to truly believe possible. Hope. Their son gurgled happily, little fists waving at the brilliant. Banners swaying above. The elder's lips trembled as she whispered a blessing in her native tongue, a sound like a song carried by winds only the soul could hear. Raylan felt the bond between him, Zyra, and their son tighten further, weaving them into the fabric of this new world being born before their eyes. He knew battles would still come. Old hatreds died slowly. Suspicion would linger in some hearts. But standing here, holding the future cradled against his chest, Raylan understood something powerful. They had already won. Not by force, not by conquest, but by choosing love over fear, unity over division. Zyra's fingers brushed his, anchoring him in that truth. Their journey was only beginning, but it would not be walked alone. Together, they would forge a future where difference was no longer a threat but a promise, where tomorrow belonged not to the old guards of hate, but to the new heirs of hope. As the first light of true unity bathed the sanctuary in gold, Raylan smiled down at his son, and the universe smiled back.